3 weeks earlier. The plate hit her shoulder before she saw the hand that threw it. "Wrong order," the man grunted, not looking up from his phone. Maya Chen caught the scalding dish with reflexes she didn't know she had, steam rising as gravy splashed across her arm. Around her, no one reacted. Just more buzzing lights, more clinking cutlery, more people pretending waitresses aren't human. She straightens. 6 plates already balanced on trembling arms, a skill mastered from months of serving the drunk, the cruel, and the indifferent. The greasy scent of hash browns clings to her uniform. Her glasses fog from the heat. Her cheap shoes pinch with every step. But her smile? It stays. Even when they snap their fingers at her. Even when they call her sweetie, like she's 10. Even when the tips come in crumpled single bills soaked in beer and disdain. Because Maya Chen isn't just carrying food. She's carrying a secret no one here would ever believe. In 21 days, she'll be in combat boots, and someone like him will be calling her ma'am. "Table 12 wants extra ketchup," called out Rico from behind the counter, his voice cutting through the din of clinking dishes and overlapping conversations. "And they're complaining about the coffee again." Maya nodded, setting down plates with gentle precision. The businessman at table 12 barely looked up from his phone as she refilled his cup, his expensive watch catching the light as he scrolled through emails. She'd seen 100 like him men, who wore success like armor, who never noticed the invisible people who served them. "Excuse me," he said without looking up. "This coffee tastes like burnt water. Can you make it fresh?" "Of course, sir." Maya's voice was steady, professional. She'd learned long ago that arguing with customers only made her shifts longer and her tips smaller. As she walked back to the coffee station, she heard him mutter to his companion, "These people probably don't even know what real coffee tastes like." The word stung, but Maya kept moving. She'd heard worse. Much worse. In the 3 years she'd worked at Metro Diner, she'd been called every name in the book, had her intelligence questioned, her accent mocked, her dreams dismissed as foolish fantasies. But she endured it all, because every insult, every slight, every moment of disrespect brought her closer to her goal: enough money saved for the Lincoln Center audition fee. That night, after the last customer had left and the floors had been mopped until they gleamed, Maya finally made her way home to the cramped studio apartment she shared with her cousin Lai. The building was one of those pre-war relics in Queens, all narrow hallways and thin walls, where the heat barely worked in winter, and the air conditioning was a prayer answered by an ancient window unit. Lee was already asleep on the fold-out couch, her nursing textbooks scattered around her like academic confetti. She worked days at the hospital, while Maya worked nights at the diner, their schedules carefully choreographed to maximize income and minimize rent. They were both chasing dreams that seemed to recede like mirages in the desert. Lee's medical degree, Maya's music career. Maya tiptoed to the tiny kitchenette, her movements careful not to wake her cousin. On the counter sat a manila envelope, official-looking and unopened. Her heart raced as she recognized the Lincoln Center logo in the corner. This was it, the response to her audition application. With trembling fingers, she tore open the envelope. The letter was brief, formal, devastating. Asterisk. "Dear Miss Chun, thank you for your interest in the Lincoln Center Young Artists Competition. Due to the overwhelming number of applications, we are unable to offer you an audition slot at this time. We encourage you to continue your musical studies and apply again in the future. Sincerely, the Lincoln Center Selection Committee." Asterisk. Maya sank onto the kitchen stool, the letter fluttering to the floor. She'd been so sure, so hopeful. She'd saved every penny for months, practicing in the restaurant's walk-in freezer during her breaks, dreaming of the moment when she'd finally get her chance. Now, that chance was gone, dismissed with a form letter that probably went to hundreds of other dreamers. But as she sat there in the dark, her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Little sparrow, the door they close is not the only door. Sometimes we must make our own entrance." Maya picked up the letter and read it again. Unable to offer you an audition slot at this time. At this time. The words sparked something in her chest. Not defeat, but defiance. She pulled out her phone and began researching, her fingers flying across the screen. The Lincoln Center Young Artists Competition was invitation only, but there was a loophole. On the day of the competition, they allowed walk-in auditions for the final hour, a throwaway time slot designed to appease the masses while maintaining the illusion of accessibility. Most serious competitors wouldn't be caught dead auditioning during the walk-in period. It was considered career suicide, a mark of desperation. Perfect. Maya looked at the calendar on her phone. The competition was in 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare, to perfect her performance, to make sure that when she walked onto that stage, she'd be ready to prove that talent didn't care about pedigree or connections. She opened her laptop, a second-hand machine that Lee had bought from a pawn shop, and began searching for backing tracks, sheet music, anything that might help her prepare. The internet was a treasure trove of resources, if you knew where to look, and Maya had learned to be resourceful out of necessity. As she worked, she thought about her grandmother's journey. Nai Nai had been born into a wealthy family in Shanghai, trained by the finest vocal coaches money could buy. She'd been destined for greatness, her voice pure and powerful enough to fill the grand opera houses of China. But then the war came, and everything changed. Maya had only learned the full story after her grandmother's death, when she'd found the hidden box in Nai Nai's closet. Inside were photographs of a young woman in elaborate costumes, reviews from newspapers praising her voice like liquid silk, and a small silver locket that Maya now wore every day. The locket contained a photo of Nai Nai at 18, standing on a stage in Shanghai, her arms raised in triumph. On the back, in her grandmother's careful handwriting, were the words, "For my little sparrow may you soar where I could not." Maya touched the locket now, feeling its familiar weight against her chest. Her grandmother had spent 50 years washing dishes, cleaning houses, working any job that would have her. She'd died in a hospital bed, her hands raw from decades of labor, her dreams buried under the weight of survival. But she'd taught Maya everything she knew. In their tiny apartment, with the neighbors complaining about the noise, Nai Nai had passed down generations of knowledge. How to breathe from the diaphragm, how to find the emotional core of a song, how to make your voice carry without straying. She'd trained Maya not just to sing, but to understand that music was about more than technique. It was about carrying the dreams of those who came before. Over the next 3 weeks, Maya's life became a carefully orchestrated routine. She worked her shifts at the diner, practiced in the restaurant's walk-in freezer during breaks, and spent her few free hours perfecting her audition piece. She chose Nessun Dorma, not because it was easy, but because it was the aria her grandmother had been preparing to perform when the war started. It was their song, their shared dream made manifest. The other waitresses at the diner thought she was crazy. "Maya, honey," said Dolores, a woman who'd been slinging coffee for 20 years, "you're setting yourself up for heartbreak. Those rich folks don't want people like us in their fancy competitions." But Maya kept practicing, kept believing. She studied videos of great performances, analyzed the technique of master singers, and slowly, carefully, made the piece her own. She wasn't trying to imitate Pavarotti or Domingo. She was trying to channel her grandmother's spirit, to give voice to dreams that had been silenced by history. The night before the audition, Maya could barely sleep. She lay on her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling and running through the aria in her mind. Lee sat beside her, holding her hand in the darkness. "You're going to be amazing," Lee whispered. "I can feel it. What if they're right?" Maya asked, "What if I don't belong there? What if I'm just fooling myself?" Lee squeezed her hand tighter. "Do you remember what Nai Nai used to say? About the phoenix?" Maya nodded. She remembered. The phoenix rises not because it was never burned, but because it chose to rise from the ashes. Lee's voice was firm. "Tomorrow, you choose to rise. The day of the audition. The auditorium's harsh fluorescent lights beat down mercilessly as Maya Chen clutched her crumpled audition sheet. Her worn sneakers squeaked against the polished floor, each step echoing through the cavernous space like a countdown to humiliation. The Lincoln Center's most prestigious vocal competition had drawn talent from across the globe, and she, a quiet waitress from Queens, stood among them like a sparrow in a nest of eagles. The other contestants were everything she wasn't. They wore designer clothes that cost more than Maya made in a month, their hair styled by professionals, their confidence radiating like heat from expensive perfumes. They spoke in cultured accents about their training at conservatories Maya had only read about online, dropped the names of famous teachers like casual conversation. "Did you hear about the girl who got in through the walk-in auditions?" Maya overheard one contestant whisper to another. "Apparently she's a waitress or something. How embarrassing." "They should just cancel the walk-in hour," replied her companion, a tall blonde with perfect posture. "It's such a waste of everyone's time." Maya felt her cheeks burn, but she kept walking. She'd come too far to turn back now. In her purse was a photo of her grandmother, taken on the day she'd won her first vocal competition in Shanghai. Nai's eyes were bright with hope, her smile radiant with possibility. Maya drew strength from that image, from the knowledge that she carried her grandmother's dreams in her voice. The waiting area was a study in contrasts. On one side sat the invited contestants, polished, confident, chatting easily among themselves about mutual acquaintances and shared experiences. On the other side, separated by an invisible but palpable barrier, sat the walk-in auditioners. They were a motley crew of hopefuls, their dreams worn on their sleeves like badges of honor. "Maya Chen?" A production assistant appeared with a clipboard, her voice carrying the bored efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "You're in the walk-in group. You'll be called toward the end of the day." Maya nodded, taking her seat in the back row. She watched as the invited contestants were called one by one, their names announced with respect and anticipation. They walked onto the stage with the bearing of people who belonged there, who'd never doubted their right to be in that space. Hour after hour, Maya listened to performances that ranged from technically perfect to emotionally transcendent. These weren't just singers, they were artists, trained from childhood to excel in this rarefied world. Their voices filled the theater with power and precision, each performance a masterclass in technique and interpretation. As the afternoon wore on, Maya began to doubt herself. What was she doing here? These people had been preparing for this moment their entire lives, while she'd learned her craft in a cramped apartment from a grandmother who'd never gotten her own chance to shine. But then she remembered Nai's words. "Little sparrow, talent is not about where you come from. It's about where you're going." Finally, as the sun began to set, the production assistant called for the walk-in auditioners. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she stood, smoothing down her second-hand dress. She'd found it at a thrift store in Queens, carefully mended the small tear in the seam, and hoped it would be enough. The backstage area was a maze of corridors and practice rooms, filled with the nervous energy of performers preparing for their moment. Maya found a quiet corner and began her warm-up routine, the same exercises her grandmother had taught her decades ago. She closed her eyes and let muscle memory take over, feeling the tension leave her shoulders as her voice found its center. "Excuse me," a voice interrupted her. Maya opened her eyes to find a young man about her age, his expensive suit marking him as one of the invited contestants. "Are you warming up back here?" "The practice rooms are for serious auditioners only." "I am a serious auditioner," Maya replied quietly. The young man's eyes swept over her appearance, taking in the mended dress, the worn shoes, the general air of someone who didn't belong. "Right. Well, just ... try to keep it down. Some of us are trying to concentrate." As he walked away, Maya heard him mutter to his companion, "I can't believe they let just anyone audition now. Standards are really slipping." The words stung, but they also ignited something in Maya's chest. She thought of her grandmother, washing dishes in restaurant kitchens, while her voice, a voice that could have filled concert halls, was silenced by circumstance and prejudice. She thought of every customer who treated her like she was invisible, every person who'd looked at her and seen only what they expected to see. Next, the voice cracked like a whip from the judge's table, where 3 industry titans sat with expressions carved from stone. Director Marcus Whitfield didn't even look up from his phone as Maya approached the microphone. His Armani suit probably cost more than her yearly rent. Name? The question came from Judge Patricia Sinclair, her diamond earrings catching the stage lights as she barely glanced up from her notes. Maya Chen. Her voice was barely a whisper, swallowed by the vast emptiness of the theater. Speak up. We don't have all day. Whitfield's irritation was palpable. Behind him, other contestants watched from the wings, perfectly coiffed, designer dressed, their confidence radiating like heat from expensive perfumes. Maya cleared her throat, her fingers instinctively moving to the small silver locket at her throat. Inside was a photo of her grandmother, Nai Nai, whose voice had once filled opera houses across China before the war stole everything from her. Before she died washing dishes in a Manhattan restaurant, her dreams buried under decades of survival. Maya Chen, she repeated, stronger this time. The third judge, renowned vocal coach Elena Rodriguez, finally looked up. Her eyes swept over Maya's thrift store dress, the carefully mended seams, the shoes that had seen too many double shifts at the diner. "And what will you be performing today?" "Nessun Dorma." The words hung in the air like a challenge. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Whitfield laughed, a sharp, cutting sound that sliced through Maya's composure like a blade. "You're joking. That's Pavarotti's signature piece. It requires ... He gestured vaguely at the other contestants. "Well, it requires a certain caliber of training, of breeding." "It's in the wrong key for a woman anyway," Sinclair added dismissively. "Perhaps something more ... Suitable? Maybe a folk song? Something ethnic?" The words hit Maya like physical blows. Around her, she could hear the other contestants snickering. Somewhere in the wings, someone whispered loudly enough for her to hear. Who let the waitress in here? Heat flooded Maya's cheeks, but she stood her ground. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Little sparrow, they will try to clip your wings. But remember, the phoenix rises not because it was never burned, but because it chose to rise from the ashes." "I'd like to perform Nessun Dorma," Maya repeated, her voice steadier now. Whitfield exchanged glances with the other judges. "Very well. But when you embarrass yourself up there, don't say we didn't warn you." He made a show of checking his expensive watch. "You have 3 minutes. Try not to waste all of them." Maya approached the microphone with deliberate steps. The accompanist, a tired-looking man who'd probably heard 1,000 broken dreams today, gave her a sympathetic nod as she whispered her key change to him. Yes, she was transposing it. Yes, she knew what she was doing. The opening notes filled the theater, and Maya closed her eyes. For a moment, she wasn't standing on this stage in her second-hand dress. She was 8 years old again, sitting cross-legged on her grandmother's apartment floor as Nai taught her to breathe, to find the music in her bones, to honor the gift that ran in their bloodline like a secret river. She remembered those lessons now, how her grandmother had made her practice scales while balancing books on her head, how she'd taught her to find the emotional truth in every note, how she'd shared the secrets of breath control that had been passed down through generations of singers. "The voice is not just sound, little sparrow," Nai had said. "It is the soul made audible. When you sing, you must sing not just with your throat, but with your heart, your history, your hope." Maya opened her eyes and saw the judges' skeptical faces, the smirking contestants, the empty seats that stretched back into darkness. But she also saw something else, her grandmother's spirit, standing in the wings, nodding encouragement. "Nessun Dorma, Nessun Dorma." The first notes left Maya's throat like a prayer, rich, powerful, flawless. The snickering stopped instantly. The whispers died. Even Whitfield's phone clattered to the table as his head snapped up. This wasn't just singing, this was storytelling. Maya's voice carried the weight of every dream deferred, every hope crushed, every moment of being told she wasn't enough. But it also carried triumph, the unshakable belief that talent would ultimately prevail over prejudice. Maya's voice soared through the theater like liquid gold, each note precisely placed, emotionally devastating. She wasn't just singing Puccini, she was channeling every sleepless night. Her grandmother had spent dreaming of stages like this one. Every sacrificed dream. Every moment of being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. Tu pure, o principessa, nella tua fredda stanza, guardi le stelle che tremano di amor, e di speranza. The aria built like a storm gathering strength. Maya's technique was flawless, trained not in conservatories, but in the kitchen of their tiny apartment, where Nai had passed down generations of knowledge like a sacred inheritance. Her breath control was iron strong, forged through years of carrying heavy trays and working double shifts, while practicing scales in the restaurant's walk-in freezer during her breaks. In the wings, contestants stood frozen. Some had tears streaming down their faces. The accompanist played with trembling fingers, his own eyes wide with disbelief. Even the stage crew had stopped working, drawn by the power of Maya's voice. But Maya was lost in the music now, transported to a place where her grandmother's spirit lived on, where dreams didn't die with deportation papers and sweatshop wages. Her voice climbed the impossible heights of the aria's climax, each note a defiant roar against every person who had ever told her she didn't belong. As she sang, Maya felt her grandmother's presence more strongly than ever. She could see Nai as a young woman, standing on stages across China, her voice bringing audiences to their feet. She could feel the weight of all those silenced dreams, all those voices that had been stilled by circumstance and prejudice. Ma il mio mistero ichiuso in me, il non mio nessun saprà. The music swelled around her, and Maya knew that this was her moment, not just to sing, but to honor every person who had ever been told they weren't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. Her voice became a weapon against injustice, a beacon for the forgotten and overlooked. All alba vincero, vincero, vincero. The final note hung in the air like a battle cry, sustained with a power that seemed to shake the very foundations of the theater. Maya held it longer than seemed humanly possible, her voice strong and clear and utterly triumphant. For 3 full seconds, the theater was absolutely silent. Then Elena Rodriguez began to clap slowly, reverently. The accompanist joined her, then the contestants in the wings, then the stagehands, then the security guards. Even the custodial staff had appeared from the bowels of the building, drawn by the power of Maya's performance. The applause built like a wave, rolling through the theater with increasing intensity. People were on their feet now, some crying, others shouting approval. It was the kind of ovation usually reserved for the greatest artists of the age. Whitfield sat frozen, his mouth slightly open. Sinclair had tears running down her cheeks, her perfectly applied makeup streaking. Elena Rodriguez was openly weeping, her hands pressed to her heart. Where ... Elena's voice was hoarse with emotion. Where did you train? Maya touched her locket gently. My grandmother taught me. She was supposed to sing at the Beijing Opera before the war. She never got her chance. The judges exchanged glances, each recognizing the significance of what they just witnessed. This wasn't just a beautiful voice. This was a voice that carried history, that spoke for the silenced and the forgotten. That was... Whitfield struggled for words. His earlier arrogance completely evaporated. That was the most technically perfect performance of Nessun Dorma I've heard in 20 years. The breath control, the vibrato, the emotional interpretation. He shook his head in wonder. I owe you an apology, Miss Chen. A profound one. Elena was already standing, her chair scraping against the floor. Maya, that wasn't just singing. That was ... transcendent. You don't just have a voice. You have a gift that comes along perhaps once in a generation." From the wings, the other contestants watched in stunned silence. The same ones who had whispered about the waitress now stared at her with something approaching awe. The young man who had questioned her presence backstage looked particularly shaken, his face pale with recognition of his own prejudice. "I'd like to offer you a full scholarship to study with me," Elena continued, her voice shaking. "But honestly, I'm not sure what I could teach you that your grandmother hasn't already. She trained you not just to sing, but to understand that music is about more than technique. It's about carrying the dreams of those who came before us." Maya felt her grandmother's presence so strongly, she almost turned to look for her. The locket at her throat seemed to pulse with warmth, as if Nine-Eye's spirit was celebrating alongside her. Sinclair finally found her voice. "Maya, we misjudged you terribly. Your performance wasn't just exceptional, it was transformative. I've been in this industry for 30 years, and I've never heard anything like that." She paused, wiping her eyes with a tissue. "You reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. You reminded all of us." Whitfield cleared his throat, his face red with shame. "Miss Chen, I want to personally invite you to headline our gala performance next month, the one we usually reserve for established international artists. After what we just witnessed, double quotes, he shook his head. "You've earned it. You've more than earned it." But Maya wasn't finished. She stepped closer to the microphone, her voice carrying clearly through the theater. "I want to dedicate this performance to my grandmother, Li Wei Chun, and to every person who has ever been told they don't belong, who has ever had their dreams dismissed because of where they come from or what they look like. Your voices matter, your dreams matter. And sometimes, just sometimes, the phoenix does rise from the ashes." The applause that followed was thunderous, sustained, cathartic. It went on for nearly 5 minutes, wave after wave of recognition and respect. When it finally died down, Maya found herself surrounded by contestants who wanted to apologize, judges who wanted to shake her hand, industry professionals who materialized from the shadows with business cards and contracts. But through it all, Maya remained grounded, remembering her grandmother's lessons about humility and grace. She accepted congratulations with quiet dignity, her responses thoughtful and sincere. As Maya walked off the stage, the other contestants parted like a sea before her. Some nodded respectfully. Others looked ashamed of their earlier mockery. One, a young woman from Juilliard who had laughed the loudest, stepped forward. I'm sorry," she whispered. We all thought double quotes." She couldn't finish the sentence. Maya paused, remembering her grandmother's words about grace. "Music doesn't care where you come from," she said quietly. "It only cares what you bring to it." The young woman nodded, tears in her eyes. "Would you could you teach me about finding that emotional truth you are talking about? I've been technically perfect for years, but I've never made anyone feel what you just made us feel." Maya smiled, seeing herself in the young woman's vulnerability. Music is about connection. When you sing, you're not performing for people, you're sharing your soul with them. My grandmother taught me that every song is a conversation between hearts. 6 hours later, the backstage area had transformed into an impromptu reception. News of Maya's performance had spread like wildfire through the building, drawing artists, administrators, and even casual passers-by who'd heard whispers of something extraordinary happening in Theater A. Maya sat in a quiet corner, finally able to process what had happened. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from Lee, who'd seen a video already going viral on social media, from her coworkers at the diner, who couldn't believe their quiet colleague was trending on Twitter, from reporters wanting interviews. But the message that made her cry was from Rico at the diner. "Maya, you beautiful genius. We're all crying into the French fries here. You made us believe in magic again." Elena Rodriguez approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Mind if I sit?" Maya gestured to the empty chair beside her. Elena settled down with a sigh, her earlier composure replaced by genuine warmth. "I need to tell you something," Elena said. 25 years ago, I was a young vocal coach, fresh out of conservatory, full of ideas about what made a serious singer. I had this student, a middle-aged woman, who cleaned offices at night and took lessons during her lunch breaks. She had the most incredible natural talent I'd ever encountered, but she didn't fit the mold of what I thought a classical singer should be. Elena paused, staring into her coffee. I discouraged her from auditioning for professional programs. I told her she should focus on being realistic about her goals. She eventually stopped coming to lessons, and I never saw her again. I thought I was being practical, helpful even. She looked up at Maya. "Today, watching you perform, I realized I had probably crushed someone's dreams because I couldn't see past my own prejudices. Your grandmother. She sounds like she was an extraordinary teacher." "She was," Maya said softly. "But she was also a cautionary tale. She never got bitter about what was taken from her. Instead, she poured all her knowledge, all her love for music into teaching me. She used to say that dreams don't die, they just wait for the right voice to give them life again." Elena nodded slowly. "She sounds like she understood something that took me decades to learn. Talent isn't about pedigree or training or connections. It's about truth. And tonight, you spoke more truth in 3 minutes than most singers manage in entire careers." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the bustle of activity around them. And Elena spoke again. "There's something else. I've been asked to put together a special program, a scholarship initiative for underrepresented voices in classical music. Would you consider being our first ambassador? Not just a student, but someone who could help us identify and nurture talent that might otherwise be overlooked." Maya felt her grandmother's presence again, a warm sensation in her chest. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about opening doors for others who had been locked out. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I'd be honored." 3 months later, the Metropolitan Opera House glittered like a jewel in the heart of Lincoln Center. Tonight was the gala performance, a sold-out show featuring the world's most celebrated artists. And there, at the top of the bill, was a name that had become synonymous with triumph over adversity. Maya Chen. In her dressing room, Maya sat before an ornate mirror, adjusting the simple silver locket at her throat. Her costume was magnificent, a flowing gown that seemed to shimmer with starlight, but the locket remained her most precious accessory. Lee bustled around the room, alternating between tears of pride and frantic adjustments to Maya's hair. "I still can't believe this is real," she said for the dozenth time. Maya Chen, headlining at the Met. Nai would be so proud. Maya smiled, thinking of her grandmother's reaction to everything that had happened since the audition. The recording contract, the international tour offers, the documentary crew that had followed her journey from diner to opera house. But more importantly, the scholarship program that was already identifying and nurturing talented singers from backgrounds similar to hers. 5 minutes, Miss Chun," came the call from the stage manager. Maya stood, smoothing her gown one final time. As she walked toward the stage, she passed photographs of the great artists who had performed here: Pavarotti, Price, Domingo, Fleming. Soon her photo would join theirs, not because she was perfect, but because she had proven that excellence could emerge from the most unexpected places. The wings of the Met were a cathedral of dreams made manifest. Maya could hear the murmur of the audience beyond the curtain, 3,000 people who had come to witness something special. Among them, she knew, were her co-workers from the diner, fellow scholarship recipients from Elena's program, and hundreds of people who had discovered opera for the first time through her story. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice rang out over the theater, "please welcome Maya Chen." The curtain rose, and Maya stepped into the light. The audience rose as one, their applause washing over her like a benediction. But as the orchestra began the opening notes of Nessun Dorma, Maya closed her eyes and was transported once again to her grandmother's kitchen. where dreams were born and nurtured with love. This time, when she sang the aria, it wasn't just for herself or even for her grandmother. It was for every person who had ever been told they weren't enough, every dreamer who had been dismissed, every voice that had been silenced by circumstance. Her performance was a declaration that talent knows no boundaries, that excellence can emerge from the most humble beginnings. Nessun Dorma, Nessun Dorma. The notes soared through the opera house, carrying with them the power of transformation. In the audience, a young girl from the Bronx leaned forward in her seat, her eyes wide with possibility. Somewhere in the balcony, an elderly man wiped tears from his eyes, remembering his own abandoned dreams. In the orchestra section, a music teacher made a mental note to encourage the quiet student in the back row to audition for the school's talent show. Maya's voice had become more than entertainment. It had become inspiration, proof that the American dream wasn't dead, just waiting for the right person to give it voice. All alba vincero, vincero, vincero. As the final notes rang out, the Metropolitan Opera House erupted in the kind of ovation reserved for legendary performances. The applause went on for 10 minutes, with multiple standing ovations and calls for encores. Critics would later describe it as a once-in-a-generation performance, comparing Maya's interpretation to the greatest singers in operatic history. But for Maya, the greatest reward came later, when a young girl approached her at the stage door. "Miss Chen," the girl said shyly, "my mama cleans offices, and I sing in the school choir. My teacher says I'm not good enough for the advanced class, but after hearing you tonight, I think maybe she's wrong." Maya knelt down to the girl's level, seeing herself reflected in those hopeful eyes. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Sophia." "Well, Sophia, let me tell you a secret. The people who tell you that you're not good enough, they're usually the ones who are afraid of how good you might become. Keep singing, and never let anyone silence your voice." The girl nodded solemnly, then broke into a brilliant smile. As she skipped away with her mother, Maya touched her locket and whispered a silent thank you to her grandmother. 1 year later, the Elena Rodriguez Center for Vocal Excellence buzzed with activity. What had started as a small scholarship program had grown into a full conservatory, dedicated to identifying and nurturing talent regardless of background or economic status. Maya served on the board while continuing her international career, using her platform to advocate for arts education and accessibility. Today was special. The center's first graduating class was giving their final performances. Maya sat in the audience, watching as 18 young singers took the stage. They came from every conceivable background: a former farm worker from California, a refugee from Somalia, a single mother from Detroit who had put herself through the program while raising 3 children. Each performance was unique, reflecting not just technical skill, but the life experiences that had shaped these artists. The farm worker sang with the earthy authenticity of someone who understood hard labor. The refugee's voice carried the pain and hope of displacement. The single mother performed with the fierce determination of someone who had overcome impossible odds. As Maya watched, she thought about her grandmother's words, "The voice is the soul made audible." These singers weren't just performing, they were sharing their souls, their struggles, their triumphs. They were proving that art was most powerful when it emerged from authentic experience. The final performer was Sophia, the young girl who had approached Maya at the stage door a year earlier. She had auditioned for the program against her teacher's advice and had been accepted with a full scholarship. Now, at just 14, she took the stage with the poise of someone twice her age. She sang Pai Jesu from Fari's Requiem, her pure crystalline voice filling the concert hall with ethereal beauty. But it was more than just a beautiful performance. It was a testament to what was possible when talent was nurtured rather than dismissed. As Sophia's final note faded away, Maya rose to her feet, leading the audience in a thunderous standing ovation. In that moment, she felt her grandmother's presence more strongly than ever, as if Nai was applauding not just Sophia's performance, but the knowledge that her dreams were living on through a new generation of voices. Later, as Maya mingled with the graduating students and their families, Elena approached her with a knowing smile. "You know," Elena said, "when I first met you, I thought I was offering you an opportunity. Now I realize you are offering one to all of us, the chance to be part of something bigger than ourselves." Maya nodded, watching as Sophia hugged her mother, both of them crying happy tears. "My grandmother used to say that talent is like a flame. You can either let it burn alone, or you can use it to light other fires. I think she'd be proud of how bright this room is tonight." As the evening wound down and the families began to leave, Maya found herself alone in the concert hall. She walked onto the stage where Sophia had just performed, feeling the weight of history and possibility in the space. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to a picture of her grandmother as a young woman, standing on a stage in Shanghai with her arms raised in triumph. But next to it was a new photo. Maya and her scholarship students, arms linked, smiling after their graduation performance. "We did it, Nai," Maya whispered to the empty hall. "We turned your dreams into a legacy." In the silence that followed, Maya could swear she heard her grandmother's voice one last time. "Little sparrow, you have learned the most important lesson of all. True success is not just reaching your own dreams, it is lifting others up so they can reach theirs." Maya smiled, touched her locket one final time, and walked off the stage. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, new opportunities, to prove that talent and determination could overcome any obstacle. But tonight, she was content in the knowledge that her grandmother's dreams lived on, multiplied and magnified through every voice she had helped to find its power. The simple woman who had been laughed off the stage had indeed silenced her critics. But more importantly, she had given voice to a generation of dreamers who would carry the melody forward, ensuring that no one with talent and determination would ever again be told they didn't belong. The revolution continued, one voice at a time, one dream at a time, one perfect note at a time. 5 years later, the documentary, Voices Rising, the Maya Chen story, won 3 Emmy Awards and sparked a global movement to democratize access to classical music education. The Elena Rodriguez Center had expanded to 12 cities, and similar programs had been established on 4 continents. Maya continued to perform at the world's greatest opera houses while serving as an advocate for arts education. Her autobiography, From Diner to Stage, became a bestseller and was translated into 23 languages. But perhaps her greatest achievement was the annual Phoenix Rising Scholarship Competition, where young singers from underrepresented backgrounds competed for full conservatory scholarships. The competition was held every year at Lincoln Center, in the same theater where Maya had once been dismissed as a simple waitress with impossible dreams. Each year, as Maya watched the new class of scholarship recipients take the stage, she remembered her grandmother's words about the phoenix rising from the ashes. The bird didn't rise because it was never burned. It rose because it chose to transform its pain into power, its struggle into song. And in concert halls around the world, wherever a voice rose in defiance of expectations, wherever talent triumphed over prejudice, wherever someone proved that dreams don't die, but simply wait for the right moment to take flight, the spirit of Maya Chen lived on, her legacy measured not in the dreams she never achieved, but in the countless dreams she had made possible for others. The simple woman had become extraordinary, not through magic, but through the radical act of refusing to be silenced. And her song continued to echo, growing stronger with each voice that joined the chorus, until the whole world was singing along.